All right. Well, I hope you had a good week. We're almost through the week. We almost made it, guys. We did. And I just wanted to just do a couple of quick videos today. This one's a little bit more funny. You might be asking yourself, AD, you're talking about this woke preacher clips montage again. And yeah, I had a thought recently, and I just wanted to share it with you. It's kind of like an epiphany where, we had a good bit of fun talking about the various woke preachers and whether or not they're telling a real story or a fake story. And, most of them, they're all unverified, but most of them, we kind of agreed this didn't really happen. It's probably fake. It's probably a misunderstanding, whatever. But I had a thought, and I wanted to share it with you. It's called Woke Preacher Inception. That's right, Woke Preacher Inception. So the idea here is the preacher telling a fib? Did they make up this story completely? Or did they hear the story from somebody who made it up? See, that's the trick right there. Is it the woke preacher that's telling this shocking, fantastical story just to drive his point home? Or did they hear it from someone and they should have known it was fake, but they decided to just retell it again anyway, just to drive their point home? And so is it woke preacher or is it woke preacher Inception? Let's go through it again. I had a great time last time. Let's do it again. Oh, no. The video isn't working. There it is. Yes.
About the time I was in middle school, one of our neighbors put up their house for sale, and a black family bought it. And the word got around.
I just love how he lowers his voice. A black family bought it. It's like he doesn't know if he's allowed to say that.
The housing value was going to plummet as a result, and people started moving.
So I think that story may have actually happened. A lot of people disagreed with me on that one, and I get it, man. I get it. It's just a little too perfect. But I think that's a firsthand story. I don't know if that's woke preacher Inception, so he gets a pass on that one. He owns that, whether it's a lie or not. He's owning that one, in my opinion.
I know of a black pastor who lost his job as a pastor at a much more predominantly white church because he tried to give voice to the injustice that was going on, and as a result, they fired him. And then after Trump looked at the camera and said, "Proud Boys, stand back, stand by," he knew he was in trouble, and he woke up the next morning with 3 trucks parked outside of his house with white men standing with their arms crossed, waiting for him to come out. Can you imagine the trauma he felt in that moment? And it infuriates me that's the life he has to live.
That one is definitely woke preacher Inception, because obviously he didn't show up to the house and see the white guys, standing, the trucks full of white guys standing there like this. That obviously is Inception. He heard that story from somebody, and the one about him getting fired for being for justice, whatever. That's one that you hear all the time. Lots of people claim they got fired for caring about justice. It's always false, by the way. It's always false. Anyway, and that's a big claim, but it's never true that somebody gets fired because they cared about justice. Anyway, but I think that's a mix, though. That's like kind of woke preacher Inception, but then he also adds his own embellishments to it. So I think this guy, he obviously should have known it was a lie that all of a sudden 3 trucks full of Proud Boys randomly appeared in front of his house. But he added his own embellishment to the story. Oh, it's just the trauma. So he's definitely not innocent. He's not like a guy who just got fooled. Like if a little old granny retold that story, I'd give her a pass, right? Like the little old granny, she's trusting, very trusting woman. Maybe she's a little bit feeble, that kind of thing. You don't hold a granny totally accountable for believing the story that a nice young man told her about the Proud Boys that showed up at his house. And I bet you that sounds like a Kyle Howard story to me. It really does. So that's Inception for sure, woke preacher Inception. But I think that he's definitely responsible for that one.
Asking various pastors of why, if you know the Bible says multi-ethnic church because of the work of Christ, why not in your area that is diverse? I had a white pastor say, well, Derwin, I know what you're saying is true, but I think dads would be afraid that their daughters would marry black men.
One professor had
So that's obviously not Inception because he's saying it's a personal story. And I have a hard time believing it. So, Derwin, show us the receipts, brother. If you want us to believe you, I don't believe you, Derwin. I do not. But if you do, if this really did happen, give me the name, give me the number, and we'll talk about this. We'll expose. I have no problem exposing a racist pastor. In fact, I would love to expose a racist pastor. I just haven't found one yet. So that's one case of woke preacher inception so far. Only one case. Everyone else has to own their lie here.
Evangelical seminary, the professor in the school will go unnamed.
He'll go unnamed because he ain't have no name.
Because he kept hearing white theologian after white theologian after white theologian after white theologian, and he asked the professor the question.
Wait, before we get into this one, I've always wondered this because I've heard variations of this exact story so many times in my life. The white theologian, and then the white theologian. And I just got to ask myself, who are these sickos that they hear some teaching from a theologian, and the very first question that they're asking themselves in their little brains, what skin color did this guy have? Like, I just don't understand. I remember in one of the very first videos I ever did on this social justice thing, it's like, I could have dozens of dark-skinned theologians in my library over there, but I would never know because I never have looked into it. I've not spent 1 minute looking into the skin color of the theologian that I was reading, not even one. It's just, what is this obsession? The white theologian. Like, who's spending time thinking about these things? I don't understand. And then caring so much about the skin color of your theologian that you have to ask your professor about dark theologians. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, dark-skinned theologians, I would assume that there are some very good dark-skinned theologians out there. But, like, why is that, like, the big concern? I just don't understand. It sounds a little racist to me. But what do I know? I'm just whatever.
He said, Prof, have black people in any form, shape, or fashion, or people of color, contributed anything to theology? And he said, put his hand over his mouth, and he kind of stroked his chin, and he looked up, leaned over his platform, and said, you guys can really sing.
And that seems like Inception. So, but again, I have to get, this is a mix. Because this is a story that Eric Mason is telling, and it certainly seems like he's presenting it as a woke preacher Inception. So somebody told them this story. But did you notice how he embellishes it? Like, he's a storyteller, this guy. This guy can tell some serious stories. He's like, he leaned over his podium, and he stroked his beard like this. And he said, you people can really sing. You know what I mean? Like, He told a story which leads me to believe maybe it's not Inception. Maybe he didn't hear this story from someone. He just fabricated it and then had the intelligence and the ability to make it a fabricated story that involves Inception. So maybe it's not Inception. Maybe he just invented this he didn't hear this from anybody. He created this story pretending he heard it from somebody. That's what I'm landing with. I think Eric Mason is completely responsible for this fabrication. The story was just too good. He stroked his beard. There's no way someone told him the story and added the detail, he stroked his beard like this. I just don't think that that's the case.
Instant, my fourth grade teacher came across the room. She grabbed him by the front of his shirt, picked him up, threw him against the chalkboard, and in front of our whole class said to him, and forgive me, I'm going to quote her, why don't you wipe that nigger smile off your face?
That hard R, man. How does he get away with that? He used the hard R. I believe this story. I think out of all the stories, this is the most believable story. It seems like a personal experience. He used the hard R, which, like I said last time, means he probably really did see it. I don't think he'd use the hard R if he hadn't really seen it. So this is not Inception, and I stand by this. A lot of people agreed with me on this one. I was surprised that I got a lot of agreement on this one. That this is the most believable out of all these stories. I think it actually happened. It's unverified. There's no way to verify it. It is shocking. It is fantastic. Fantastical, I should say. But I think it actually happened. Woke preacher clips. I think it actually happened. And then there's this one. I don't want to watch this one. I find Phil Vischer just very off-putting in almost every way. This is the one where he tells a story about James Dobson. I believe this story happened. It's not racist. Phil Vischer is making up the idea that this is a racist thing, and then Sky over here is doing the same thing. And so, not Inception, but it's just a misunderstanding. He's made up the racist part of it. Anyway, woke preacher Inception. I think this goes on a lot more than you think it does. People just repeat a story as if it's gospel that they have no way to verify, and it's obviously false, so they should have not ever repeated it because it's obviously fantastical and crazy. But anyway, that's my thought on that. Woke preacher Inception. Look into it at a woke church near you. God bless. I hope you found this video helpful. God bless.